So today is July 9th. This is the meeting of the Whitman Open Space and Recreation Plan Steering Committee. And present we have
Jason DeRozier,
Laurie Muncy,
Ryan Tully,
Ed Winnett,
Leanne McKenzie,
and Kathy Keefe.
thank you. So the agenda is pretty straightforward today. There's just some updates from our last meeting, and then going to spend most of our time today reviewing the 10-year action plan and building that out. We have our public meeting next week to get sort of like resident and stakeholder feedback on the 10-year action plan, and then it'll be sort of finalized after that. So starting with the old business, as you can see here, most of the sections are in some process of being drafted. So working on the summary, which is section 1, the introduction to the plan, the inventory of lands of conservation or recreation interest, which is section 5, which has been sort of the most challenging of the sections, just through sort of like making sure the data is clean and correct in terms of parcel records and those sorts of things. So I've voluntold my colleague Rhiannon, who's a comprehensive planner at Old Colony Planning Council, who understands some of the open space planning a little bit better than I do, coming majority from the housing world. So she's going to take over section 5.
Nice.
I'm in sort of draft because she's been working so much on the parcel tables, and she's already emailed Ed a number of times, has met Ed. So there's that relationship there. So she's going to sort of, I assume, from our last conversation, take that on and work on that for me, which is super helpful. Section 6, which was previously section 7, is the community analysis of needs, 10-year action plan, which we'll talk a little bit about this evening, public comment, and then references and resources is section 9. A little bit on public engagement through the spring and summer. I've done the meetings with town boards and commissions that I need to do it to this point. The last one was with the Historic Commission, met with them in April, I think. They reviewed sections 3 and 4 and had zero feedback. They said they learned a lot from the chapters that were provided, and everything looked good. So no feedback. They also didn't call me out on anything that was incorrect, so that was good.
That's a win.
So I take that as sort of a positive. Workshops and activities for further input. I tabled at Whitman Day in the park. Kathy saw you, talked to you a little bit. Liam, you joined me after sort of tabling with the church group. I did an activity for Whitman Day. It was called the Wish Tree. This is how it finished. So I had various sticky notes. The colors of the sticky note corresponded to a particular prompt. I might not remember what the colors are at this point, but pink, green, and orange. One was, what would you like to see more of in the town of Whitman? What open spaces do you currently sort of enjoy, and what are some barriers to, peruse or using some open spaces in the neighborhood? Not surprising, what Whitman needs more of, and what sort of rose to the top in terms of the wish tree was more trails. Yeah. Skate park came up a number of times, not surprisingly, with the younger people that were there, and dog park.
Right.
Same things that have come out of the survey, and same things that we hear all over the place. So those consistently rank at the top. There were also some additional interesting things that I will call out when it gets back here, but approximately 60 people engaged with me at the table.
And it was a bad weather day, so it was rainy. Pretty good.
It was crowded though. So
yeah, that's
crowded.
Good. Yeah.
I flagged a lot of people down in terms of like, hey, do you live in town? And if they said yes, I was like, good. And so, particularly if they had kids, and there were a lot of teens that sort of participated as well. From the teens, the one thing that was frequently mentioned was the Colebrook Boulevard Trail, that they feel that it's sketchy and unsafe. Sort of towards the back, because there's a lot of needles and things happening in the back that they don't feel safe. So there is a strategy or a goal in the 10-year action plan to sort of complete that loop and sort of maintain it and sort of make sure that it's safe for people to use. More swimming pools was mentioned, performance space and stage. More dog-friendly spaces, dog park, lots of dogs, toddler-friendly play areas. I like the playground because I can climb, skate park, fenced in areas for children, bathrooms came up, Holbrook Loop. So a lot of things that we've heard previously, which makes me feel like we're on the right track with some of these things. And then
When people have mentioned open space without development, do you know, are they just talking just leave the woods? Is that?
yeah, there was a couple of people that sort of talked to me and that didn't put on sort of a sticky note. There was this sort of desire to sort of preserve or conserve open spaces that aren't for development. And so there's one here, more open spaces without housing being built on it, without houses being built on it, is sort of just preserving it as open space and not sort of like, having it preserved for a little bit of time so that it can then be ready for development.
Which could parlay into conservation.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
And then next Tuesday, it says on the agenda 7/17. That's changed to 15. Originally it was scheduled for Thursday the 17th, but due to budget cuts and library changing hours, I didn't know that until I had emailed
David
David
Aronson.
over at the library to sort of confirm for next Thursday. He's like,
Good
I was
thinking.
actually planning to email you, and then so I had to change it real quick. So it's gonna be Tuesday, same week. I did do a bit of sort of promotion for that. I did share the flyers with everyone. Feel free to share that around. I did have a stack printed with the old date. I didn't bother printing more because I didn't want to waste paper, conserve resources. But sort of spread it around town. I posted it to the town Facebook page, the Whitman 02382
Okay.
community Facebook group a couple of times.
I'll put it on the sign.
It's gotten some good engagement there. I also sent it out to about 100 people who filled out the survey who said that they were interested in sort of receiving updates
Great.
About the open space plan.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for a decent turnout. I think if we got 20, 25,
Right.
that'd be a good turnout for that space.
I will be here. Sorry.
Good.
It's my late night here.
Wednesday walks, I'll sort of open it up to Ed and Ryan for their input as well. But we've finished those up as of today. Since our last meeting, we did Bear Meadow on June 18th. We did Hobart Meadow on July 2nd. And we did Camp Alice Carlton today. I will say, in terms of the purpose or the motivations for these walks, was to determine what the possibilities are for these sites in terms of recreational interest and mostly passive recreation,
Right.
I would say. All of the sites that we visited through this half as well as the previous half, beyond sort of Pete Hole, which I think is sort of just leave that alone. Like, there should be no focus on that one. But the remainder of them, there's a possibility, I would say, that there could potentially be trail networks extended. So, for example, Bear Meadow, there looks to be opportunities to sort of connect the Bear Meadow area and the Flaherty Trail potentially through sort of Commercial Street up to Hobart Meadow, it seems. If I'm remembering that correctly. Ed, Ryan, anything else you want to?
From Bear Meadow, you could get.
I might be backwards.
Yeah, from Bear Meadow, we could get to Hobart.
That's right.
To Hobart Meadow.
Yep.
But the trail ends on Commercial Street, housing. We found, there's the old railroad bed, but it ends at housing. So there's really no access from the Flaherty Trail, but we walked around and they had the drone. And we're going to go for a little canoe trip, remember? And maybe see if there's a way for us to get a trail along the edge of the meadow over towards sort of the roads off of Washington Street.
Nice.
But there's no real direct access route right now, but it's certainly a possibility. And that would be great because then it would line right up to Hobart Meadow.
And at this point in time, we don't have to come up with what that plan is. All you need to say in the open space plan is explore the feasibility. Now that we know that there is potential,
Yes.
there can be additional resources spent and additional sort of attention spent on figuring what those
Yep.
connections are. It's just doing the legwork previously. It can be included in the plan versus including something in the plan that doesn't end up being feasible because of something that we could have missed on one of these walks.
And I think it'd be really cool because we could put a bridge going across the river, right where the train trestle is. So
Super
'cause nobody
cool.
knows that's there. You
Right.
know what I mean? And at least
Right.
bring some visibility to it. But yeah, we've had fun.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
Talking
Yeah.
about open spaces, it's cool to come out to these giant meadows and
Right.
just look straight across. That's cool.
Yeah. Good.
And the Hobart Meadow, I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah.
The fact that, we potentially put a boardwalk from behind the DPW over to the senior center, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
It's a very pretty area. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and these walks have shown that it's plausible, because I was just going based off of just assumptions at the beginning, but it does seem plausible that you could, in theory, connect East Bridgewater via Whitman to Abington. And have some sort of like green, I thought of this word earlier, but I'm not going to remember it anymore, sort of like a green network.
Yeah.
Or sort of like take a steal or adapting a term for the time being, an Emble network through sort of this area, which then would open up possibilities to other potential connections in the region. I think we might have discussed it here. Although we discussed it with Matt at one of the previous walks where there's potential to sort of connect to Bay Circuit Trail.
Yes,
I think that was also mentioned
yes,
here at one
yes.
point.
And so the Camp Alice Carlton piece too. I know when we, talked to the folks over in Rockland, they would love nothing more to see that connect over to Hanson and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that abuts other conservation areas. So we talked about it today when we were out there that, there's potential to maybe extend that into those other areas, and that might give a better networking opportunity.
And then just real quick on Bear Meadow, one of the pages, Leanne, that you scanned in that old book at the library, Dinosaur Rock on the east side of Bear Meadow. Didn't come across that in our walks.
We were trying to find it.
I'm really trying. I want to find this rock so I can take a photo of it for the updated plan, because I believe this is probably the only unique geological feature that exists in Whitman, and the state's big on it.
Can I look at that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Does it look like a dinosaur?
No, I think it's just from that.
Oh,
that
Yeah, I don't know.
which is probably why it's a unique geological.
I see. I see.
Go on another walk.
So
Yeah.
it just says east side,
see that too?
because
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
technically we were on the east side. I just don't know.
remember which book this was from.
Yeah.
I found a couple of rock, but they were really small, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's right there.
I don't know what year.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year that one was? Was that the 19?
might have been the
80s.
80s.
The east side, it would be
81?
along
Yeah.
where we were, kind of.
We're going on a hunt.
Yeah.
On a dinosaur
Rock hunt.
Yeah, we're going on a rock
Mark
hunt.
it when you find it.
Yeah.
Geocache.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say about the walks is in section 5, there are larger parcels of land that might have some good value for recreation. That maybe when we have section 5, in a more finalized state, we can figure out which ones we want to go visit.
Yep.
Because some of them might make a good dog park.
Yeah, no, and that's something that's going to come up. So, in terms of new business, and this is really where the working part of the meeting is going to start, I did make the goals sort of more aspirational for the action plan. So, the new aspirational version of the goal is what's in black. The original version is what's in purple. So goal 1 is champion the protection and restoration of Whitman's natural environment for future generations, which was previously protect and improve the natural environment. Goal 2, proactively preserve open space while guiding sustainable and resilient growth, which was originally preserve open space while managing growth. Number 3, goal 3, ensure universal access to parks and open spaces by removing barriers and embracing inclusive design, which was originally improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Goal 4, unify and elevate land stewardship by aligning Conservation Commission priorities and creating visionary management plans, which was originally align Conservation Commission goals, create open space management plans, and Goal 5, empower local champions to monitor progress and drive implementation with transparency and accountability, which was originally tasked stakeholders with tracking and reporting progress. Goal 6, inspire community pride and connection through greater visibility and enjoyment of trails, landings, and natural areas, which was originally promote awareness and passive use of trails and landings. Goal 7, transform Whitman into a walkable, bikeable town through connected greenways and safe pedestrian corridors. That was originally support pedestrian and bike access and greenway connectivity. Goal 8, secure and steward critical open space to preserve ecological, recreational, and cultural value, which is originally acquire and protect valuable open space assets. Goal 9, create a centralized resource hub that equips landowners with tools to protect and care for their land, which was establish a resource hub for landowners. And what's not included on here, but is on this sort of draft 10-year plan, is Goal 10, which I did add after, which was expand recreational offerings to meet evolving community needs. Because that is something that was sort of referenced in the survey in one way or the other, as well as in conversations. But I didn't draft that goal until after the agenda was already finalized and printed. Any comments, feedback, questions, concerns on these goals? Do they sound right? Anything that's missing?
I think it's great.
That sounds great, yeah.
Yeah.
Lori, as someone who's worked on these before,
Perfect.
do they seem obtainable, achievable, worthy of putting on here?
For sure.
Because what I don't want to do is set up anyone for disenfranchisement or defeat by having sort of lofty goals, but the goals themselves, I think, are achievable because there's a number of strategies under these goals that are achievable, right? There's sort of like long-term or vision-setting things that are sort of like longer term, but there are also like short-term things that can be that can build momentum over time. So moving into the 10-year action plan, the draft, and so the way that this is set up is that it's set up by goal. So each page is its own goal, and there are objectives, actions, responsible parties. Time frame has not been filled out because we're going to work on that together, and then funding sources. The funding sources that are in red are ones that I didn't want to just assume that we're going to be there, right? So I know, especially after the conversation I had with David at the library, there's sort of like, challenging conversations that are happening at the town level in terms of like funding sources and availability. And so I didn't want to say that the local budget will just take care of this, right?
No,
We're really going to be looking at, as part of this plan, what are some local, state, or federal resources that can be sort of like obtained to help with offset the costs of some of these things. So, Lori, specifically, if there are any grants or things that I'm forgetting in here, certainly feel free to raise those so I can add them. And then as we go through these, we'll work on the timeline. So is this a year 1 task? Is this a year 1 to 3? Is this 3 to 7? Is this 7 to 10? So really thinking about what that's going to be. So goal 1, champion the protection and restoration of Whitman's natural environment for future generations. Objective 1.1, restore and enhance Hobart Pond and surrounding ecosystems. The action here is conduct pond cleanups, install signage, and then host public stewardship events. The responsible parties for this one would be the Conservation Commission, the DPW, and the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee. In terms of time frame, where would you put this on short term, medium term, long term? And again, it's
I'm going to
just
ask
the
a
actions.
silly question.
Yep, sure.
What's involved in a pond cleanup?
So I don't think we're going to actually do anything probably to the water itself. I think it's probably going to be more what we did when Make Me Brand New, local nonprofit, hosted a cleanup day at Hobart Pond.
Yep.
So it's probably going to be more of that, cleaning up
The periphery of the pond and sort of the
Yes,
general
yeah.
area, so that
Yeah.
trash and stuff doesn't get into.
trash. Exactly, yeah. I mean, the water itself is healthy in terms of supporting a life in the pond. At this point, we know that. We're already monitoring that. As far as, I guess, considering Hobart Pond to be sort of restored and having achieved that full loop that keeps coming up around the pond, that's probably a few years out.
So the Boy Scouts have started that.
Oh, they have
Oh.
started
They have
already.
started,
Okay,
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I need
Yeah,
to take a
okay.
walk down that, yeah.
yeah.
So I was
In
thinking
terms of the
maybe-
loop?
The loop, yeah.
Right, because that's
Yeah.
the separate
that's
strategy.
separate.
Yep. This is just sort of restoring, enhancing the pond and the ecosystem itself versus like trails and all that stuff. Could you
I mean,
can you
like-
put ongoing as a timeline?
Yeah, that's what I feel like. This is just going to be an ongoing
Okay,
effort. I
yeah,
think we
that's a
just
good
need
idea.
to devote some more attention to this.
Yep.
Would it help to categorize the actions, whether they're simple, difficult, or very difficult?
Well,
Would
that's.
help determine.
I mean, I think you can maybe rank. I think the way you would do that is sort of like in terms of the timeline. So if them something simple, you would say that's more short term. If something's more complicated, difficult, you probably punt that out until like the later
So
time.
like short term being within.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I'd say within the first 1 to 3 years is short term.
Okay, I mean,
Medium term would be like 3 to 7. Long term would be like 7 to 10.
Well,
I
I
like
think
that.
I think like perhaps the role like this specific committee has in this is maybe just as kind of a citizen, like maybe Brand New did, or and maybe I know Angela, so
Yep.
maybe I can contact her. Is like trying to something we could do right away is just trying to schedule like quarterly cleanups of that
Mhm.
area, and invite the public to come,
Yeah.
and just very similar to what Angela has already done,
Exactly.
just on a more regular basis.
Yeah, and for the open space plan, for the 10-year action plan, you don't have to get that granular. It would be on sort of the responsible parties to determine how that
Okay.
work is carried out,
Yeah.
and then how you keep track of that, and then report that out. Because one of the goals is like
Right.
provide like regular sort of updates
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, this one's probably like a short-term thing.
Yep.
It's just like the Conservation Commission is already taking care of Hobart Pond. It's just we need to be a little more specific and just like turn our attention more to.
Yeah, and this one's probably going to be ongoing because you're not going to just do it in years 1 to 3 and be
Right.
like,
We're just
well, we
never-
cleaned it up.
yeah,
Like, you have to
exactly.
clean them up consistently.
Yeah.
Things like install signage. What does that mean? What is it?
I
It
think,
was
you know,
what kind of
informational. I think it was
Like a
people wanting
kiosk?
more. Yeah. Like.
but also like
people
what when we reached out to Bruce Martin,
Yeah.
I believe, where we were talking about like providing signage for the pond
Right.
in terms of trash.
Yeah.
Like, please throw away your trash.
Oh, yeah.
Or installing trash barrels.
Right.
He's like, well, you could install trash barrels, but people are probably still not going to use it. So installing signs like you have he's seen on other trails, like you bring it in, you take it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take your trash with you, or whatever
Right.
those signs look
Yeah,
like.
right.
I've seen them
Some
before on
clever,
other trails.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is there a "Don't feed the geese" sign there already?
No, I haven't seen
Ooh.
Not at Hobart, like on the pond, but when I was driving to Camp Ellis Carlton today, to the left, I think it is, of the Hobart Pond area, there's like another open green space. There's a sign there that says "Don't feed ducks or geese."
Okay.
Not at the pond specifically, but
Okay.
objective 1.2: identify threats to water
So what did
systems.
we say for timing?
Ongoing.
Ongoing, just because that's going to have to, because in year 7 you're still probably going to have to do this. here in year
Revolving.
9.
Yep.
Identify threats to water systems. Action here would be inventory culverts and watershed stressors. Here is the Conservation Commission, DPW, and I just added OCPC because we have a dedicated staff person who loves culverts on the team. So I'm sure that Matt through OCPC
Matt
can
Dyer?
help,
Ah,
can assist with culvert assessments as well.
I had MS4 here too, if I were.
In terms of a funding source, MS4.
Yeah, they're responsible for reporting.
Yeah.
So are they a funding source or are they a responsible party?
They're not, well, they can be a funding source because the town appropriates funding to comply with MS4.
Okay.
So they can take that money to do the culvert work
Okay.
as part of MS4.
But the rest of them are also correct, for the most part?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
There might be others too. Maybe DEP might have something, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Justin Evans, I think, is on a subcommittee about stormwater management. The select board member in
Mhm.
Whitman, so he might be interested as well in identifying those different waterway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the way that I'll probably present it, and I'm actually going to do that now just because it'll take a lot of time to sort of go through these one by one, what I'm going to do is sort of like take each goal, run through all of the objectives, and then sort of open it up for conversation
Okay.
through all of them, right?
Okay, go. Yep, okay.
So, 1.3, manage and reduce invasive species. Develop an invasive species plan and host educational workshops. Responsible parties, Conservation Commission, and the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee. Funding sources or potential funding sources is the EEA Invasive Plant Program, and as well as volunteer efforts. 1.4, build environmental stewardship through civic ecology. Launch youth and community-led ecology programs. Some responsible parties here include schools, the library, and the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee. Some potential funding sources, green communities and private donations. Promote awareness through educational programming. Hosting Taking Care of Our Natural Environment event series. That reframing of that event series was through a comment from Leanne. The Open Space Recreation Plan Committee and the library could be potential partners or responsible parties. Didn't put down specific funding sources other than the Cultural Council and Friends groups. Again, didn't want to volunteer anyone, so that's why they're red. And then develop and implement. I frame this as a humane goose control strategy. Research best practices and install deterrents in parks and fields. DPW, Recreation Department, and Board of Health. Local budget is in red, but mass wildlife and private donations. Questions, comments, concerns. Specifically when it comes to anything that is in the objectives, actions, or if you have sort of ideas around timeframe for any of these.
On 1.3, manage and reduce invasive species. So currently the Conservation Commission, as part of our taking care of the ponds, we do this for the ponds. Currently they are examined regularly, and there are treatments applied for invasive species in the ponds. This comes out of our budget to pay for that. So that's happening in the water.
That's ongoing.
So that's
Ongoing for 1.3.
In the water, not necessarily in land.
It's the water.
Yeah,
Just the water.
Just the water invasive, so you still have land.
We still have land.
We don't do anything with the lands, the Conservation Commission. I mean, no.
Yeah, I think this is specifically targeted towards land invasive species like knotweed and those
We
things.
can have a discussion and try to figure out. I don't even know if we have it. There must be an invasive species list available through the state.
Right.
Maybe you can just make pamphlets even to give out when people have questions on especially plants that might be hazardous to the skin, because there's a lot of those that you would want
I think there's a listing of invasive species locally in section 4 of the open space plan. I think I wrote about them.
Yep.
So in terms of the actual plan itself for land-based invasive species, and then hosting educational workshops, because there may be some invasive species that people plant not knowing that they're invasive, and so just educating the community around sort of like planting native plants versus other things that might cause damage or havoc to their local community.
And we may be able to enlist mass wildlife as well too to help host an educational seminar.
So I'm thinking that's probably years 3 through 7. That's medium term, because you have to come up with the partners and the curriculum and actually doing it. Or is that more so? Do you think that you could get that stuff together? And I said the proverbial you, not just you, within years 1 to 3.
Probably 1 to 3.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's left on the list because we got to prioritize.
This is page 1.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Right. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Well, one way to meet that requirement easily is when you issue from
I
NOIs.
think we do.
Part of your-
You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't we already? We
do.
talk about that.
well, we look at endangered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, like when people, or even when people have to plant, like recently,
Right.
A
we
list of
recommend
plants.
native plantings and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, we do
So-
provide that.
Yeah.
So maybe a list of don't use. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably attainable within
I think so.
3 years. Yeah.
We'll do it. It'll probably be us personally. Yes.
Sounds like it.
Somehow.
Yeah. Oh, and from my side at not at on recreation, but at Whitman Hanson Community Access. Like, as far as like workshops go, we could also think of like kind of like a PSA
Yeah.
type video element to it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to like through WHCA like help produce something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Very cool.
So for that one, for the actual land invasive species, I put years 1 to 3.
Yep.
And again, there's a goal that sort of like you regularly sort of like report on these. If something doesn't look like it's going to happen in years 1 to 3, you can also amend and sort of change it on your in terms of like keeping track of that. Because if something doesn't happen, you can mention that because then we know if OCPC or whoever does the next one in 10 years,
Right.
Like. Check. This one wasn't done, so this is a priority.
Yeah, so now, right.
Or this will never happen. Let's not think about doing this again.
Right. So, Leanne, can you tell me what an NOI is?
A notice of intent.
Okay.
So this is when someone is doing a project in an area that has wetlands
Yeah.
in or around it. They have to come before the Conservation Commission, and we can make certain orders or conditions. So can be like, don't plant invasive species.
Thank you. Okay.
Or if someone does, intentionally or unintentionally cut down a bunch of trees or remove plants from a wetland area,
Right.
we can tell them, you need
Stay
to
within these
replant.
guidelines, yep.
Yeah, you need to replant. You need to replant with native wetland plants.
Okay.
So,
So for build environmental stewardship through civic ecology, and that's around youth and community-led ecology programs, because that seems like a heavier lift than just doing an educational workshop on an invasive species. I put years 3 through 7.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of sort of like foundational work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Everyone feel like that's.
Yes.
is
Reasonable.
there a green club at the high school? Do you know? No,
I'm not aware
You're not
of one.
okay.
No. But it might be a possibility, an opportunity to sort of start one, right?
Right. Well,
And
that's
then
what I figured. There must be some interest. Yeah. Okay.
promote awareness through educational programming, taking care of our natural environment event series. Again, I put that on years 3 through 7 because I think that's tied to that. And then develop and implement a humane goose control strategy. I put on years 1 to 3. Do you folks think that that's longer term than years 1 to 3? It's probably more.
When I was a
2 to 3.
DPW commissioner, I did a whole paper on the goose problem in Whitman and different strategies. So they have that, and we implemented some of the strategies, and it worked. I just don't know that it's being,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in full
Executed.
disclosure, as a vegan, the humane piece was the important part.
Yeah.
Versus like just seeing a bunch of dead geese around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is such a priority for people too. That one keeps mentioning it, so I think it
But
has.
having it be like a top level priority.
that's a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for inventory culverts and watershed stressors, I put that years 1 to 3 because it's sort of just inventorying them,
Inventory. Okay, yeah.
and then sort of like ongoing maintenance if needed. But so goal 2: proactively preserve open space while guiding sustainable and resilient growth. Objectives: this one has 4. Some of these are shorter than others. Some of them are longer. Modernize zoning to promote conservation. An action here would be to update bylaws for low impact development, LAD, or conservation subdivisions. Some communities in Massachusetts have open space zoning districts or development districts where, you build housing, but you also like preserve open space as part of it. It's something that I'm looking at for 40R.
Nice.
In parts of Whitman for next week.
Okay.
But because this gets to the point where people want, like, there's a focus on housing development, but you shouldn't develop just to develop while sort of at the, what's the word I'm looking for? At the expense of preserving open space as well, right? And so how do you do both and? And so low impact development and conservation subdivisions allow you to develop while also preserving and conserving.
Isn't there a bylaw already that requires a certain amount of open space within developments? I'm reading the bylaws because I'm on the zoning board now. But
Yeah, I mean, there might be sort of like, and again, I'm also reading through the zoning plan for Whitman, or the zoning code for Whitman. And there are setbacks and other things, but there's no, like, from what I've seen so far, no, like, specific saying you have to preserve, like, 4 acres of open, or like 2 acres
Yeah.
of open space as part of this. Low impact development or conservation subdivisions would require that. In certain, not in all aspects, right? Because if you don't have any land to conserve, it doesn't make sense to having that. But there might be areas where development happens that you want to carve out space for, conservation or preservation purposes.
And the other thing, sort of on that too, Leanne and I have been talking, there's a lot of towns in Massachusetts that have ordinances, Conservation Commission ordinances or bylaws to protect open space. Whitman does not have that. We don't have that. So we've talked about,
Yeah, we may be proposing a bylaw coming, but so I may
Nice.
reach out to you just to
Okay.
understand that process.
Whitman has a zoning board, I'm assuming.
yes.
They would be a,
Yeah.
yep, they
This
would be a
bylaw-
partner. Select board,
Yeah.
they're involved with. Yep.
How's that?
And plan.
Yep, the planning board's already there. Time frame for that one is probably longer term.
I agree.
There is a possibility that OCPC may be assisting the town of Whitman with a master plan. If
Let's
they
hope.
get the funding through One Stop.
Yep.
So this is something that we potentially build into that.
Yeah.
So I would say probably for this time frame is 3 to 7.
I would say so
Yeah,
too.
In terms of like,
With everyone
Right.
happier.
That's right.
Because it does take time. You gotta have a legal
Yeah.
review.
Yeah, no,
well,
right.
because then you have to get the funding, you have to do the master plan, then you have to work on the zoning and pass it at
That's
town
right.
meeting, and so
Yep, you have to have public hearings.
I don't want to do
all
1
of
to
that.
3 because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Yeah, it'd be a rush.
yeah.
Work weekends.
Identify land for permanent protection, map and prioritize parcels for acquisition or easements. This is essentially what we're currently doing with Section 5 in a sense. So the Open Space Committee, Conservation Commission are sort of the primary responsible parties here. What do folks feel for time frame for that one? And this is just mapping and prioritizing, not actually like acquiring any of them.
I'd say 1 to 3.
One to
I do
three,
too.
because it's already kind of happening. you know?
Okay. 1 to 3. Engage landowners on preservation options. Host outreach sessions and direct engagement. Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee. Is it a committee or a commission? Commission. So funding sources could potentially be some land trust partners, and so this is just educating landowners on sort of donating, land that they have for.
Right now, though, we don't have a good process for doing that. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with 2.1, updating the bylaws. Because there's got to be, you got to have a process. How
Yep.
does someone do it? How do you create a conservation easement? We don't have conservation easements in Whitman.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little more
Yeah.
involved, I think. So
3 to 7.
I'd go 3 to 7.
I'm just making a note that you don't have conservation.
Oh, definitely, yeah. 'Cause,
Easements.
yeah, that's what we've talked about. Is like if someone wanted to do it, there's no
Means to it,
Do
right?
it
There's
right
no
now.
vehicle to, yeah.
Yeah, because right now it's like people just stop paying the taxes on the land, and then it just kind of sits there for years and years and years until there's
Is that
some.
what you guys ran
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the town forest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
2.4, last one here. Monitor conserved lands, develop and implement monitoring protocols, which I think just speaks to what was discussed. Conservation Commission, the Open Space Committee. And the reason this isn't red is because I don't know if Whitman has any dedicated CPA funds for admin. I sort of
10%.
did this 10%.
Yes.
I did this work in Boston, which is very different.
I'll bet.
And so they have sort of like robust funds.
Yeah.
Just the amount of money that you can bring in for this. So I didn't want to dedicate those. But knowing that they're there, the question would be to determine whether or not CPA admin funds can be used for
Okay.
that purpose.
Yep.
But CPA funds essentially could be used for
A bunch of this,
at least acquiring
right?
green open space, whether it's the admin piece of it. So that would probably, because it's monitoring, I'll just put ongoing.
Yeah.
Because monitoring is ongoing. All right, goal 3. Ensure universal access to parks and open spaces by removing barriers and embracing inclusive design. This has 6 objectives. So 3.1, identify physical barriers. So conduct ADA audits of all town-owned open spaces. We essentially did some of them, but it was only surface level, and now they're not required anymore in the open space and recreation plan. I'm still going to provide some information that we got or gleaned from those ADA assessments, because essentially the town paid for them, and so I want to make sure that they're actually being incorporated in some way or another. But some additional ADA assessments might be needed. Responsible parties here would be DPW, Recreation Department, and the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee. Some potential funding sources is the park grant. There's also ADA improvement grants. Would that fit here?
And I put selectmen also as responsible party.
Yep. Select. It's a select board, right?
It is
In
a
Whitman?
select
Okay.
board nowadays.
Some haven't changed it. Some have.
I know,
So I just need to make sure
they
I'm using
resisted
the-
here, but I mean, dude,
Well, I know,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That's all you have to say,
2025,
dude.
let's go.
that's not dude, yeah.
And that's also connected to 3.2, which is improve accessibility, upgrade signage, paths, and parking at parks. Responsible parties here, DPW, Council on Aging. Would you also put the select board here?
And they should have an ADA coordinator.
Do you have an
Which
ADA
I
coordinator?
believe is the building commissioner.
Okay,
Yes.
coordinator. Great.
What would the Council of Aging do for that?
Recommendations.
Just recommendations.
Yeah, because in talking with them, they have a lot of sort of thoughts, I think, in terms of like accessibility. One thing that I'm probably going to, if we get the master plan, and something that I will just say now, just sort of thinking about it, not putting it in the open space plan, but something to think about, but it came out of discussions relating to the open space plan, is making, what's the street between Dunkin' Donuts and Town Hall?
So there's a Hayden
Yeah.
and there's Davis.
Okay, I think it's Hayden.
Hayden.
The one that the Council on Aging is
Hayden.
on. Making that one way.
Yes, it sounds familiar.
It's just
Yeah.
Because
Which-
of the parking.
yeah. It's
right.
just which way do you make it? Coming up towards Town Hall, or
You make it with Town Hall being on your right. That's my vote.
because then
South
sort of
Ave.
like along the side going towards Essex Street, you could do diagonal parking because it's
Right.
only one way,
And so you know what, Maple, which is so if you
which then would opt for an opportunity
would
more
be a way to
accessible
come back around because Maple's one way coming the opposite direction.
Should do a traffic assessment from us.
Mhm.
You know, have the guys go over there.
Oh yeah, right.
And do a
Yeah.
report on it, so you have something to look at. And
That's something that's just sort of like in the back of my mind. Is sort
Yeah,
of
gotcha.
Yeah, I would keep Maple in mind as well because
Right.
it's already one way, so maybe
That's right.
just, diagonal spaces could just be painted in there.
because with diagonal
That's right now,
spaces, you
people
open
just
up
park
additional
inside. Yeah.
parking opportunities, and also allows you, if you can be creative in terms of like accessibility and parking and whatnot, in terms of like vans and the unloading space that's needed. It's hard to do that in tandem, loading into the street.
Yeah.
So if they're sort of diagonal, that's different. 3.3, add inclusive amenities, install benches, shade structures, and sensory features in public spaces, town-owned recreational spaces. Recreation Department and DPW are listed as responsible parties. CPA is listed as a potential funding source. Expand inclusive programs. Launch senior and adaptive recreation programming. Here would be the Council on Aging and the Recreation Department. There are some grants and private sponsorships that might be able to assist with that. 3.5, improve and expand sidewalk network around open spaces and recreation facilities. Conduct sidewalk condition assessments near key recreation and open space assets. Coordinate sidewalk improvements with ADA accessibility upgrades and complete streets goals. Engage the community to identify unsafe or missing sidewalk connections. Be here, DPW, Planning Board, Open Space Recreation Plan Committee. There are again some grants there. And then 3.6, improve outdated and or broken playground equipment. When I was at Whitman Day, heard a lot about the broken playground equipment.
Oh,
Replace outdated equipment and improve safety,
Who knew?
accessibility. Assess and repair deteriorated recreational infrastructure. Here, Recreation Department I have and DPW. And again, there's some local and state funding that would be available for that. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns on anything that's listed here?
so on the sidewalks up in the center of town where flowers were added, and how did that come about? Does anyone know?
Was that the DPW?
It must have been,
Yeah,
but I wasn't
I don't
familiar with,
Yeah.
so they might, be able to weigh in on this, improve or expand the sidewalks and all of that.
Well, the bump outs, that was like who came in to present that?
I don't know.
It was at a select board meeting like 2 or 3 years ago. It was an outside, I don't remember exactly
Yeah.
who it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like the DPW's initiative. It was like a
It wasn't, huh?
planning type,
Oh.
I think a state agency.
Yeah, is that state?
Someone must. Oh.
Yeah, I forget exactly what,
Yeah, I'll look into that though. It
department
might
they were from.
relate.
Yeah.
But I think sidewalks, you have to go through the DPW, and
Right.
funding is always a problem with paving roads and sidewalks and those things.
But there are grants available to expand sidewalk networks because it provides additional pedestrian safety, so that
Right.
you don't have
Right.
conflicting users on like a roadway without a sidewalk.
Right.
And there's also MassWorks money available, millions of dollars that are available for sidewalk and infrastructure improvements.
Who's responsible for the equipment in the park? For the playground equipment?
It's a good
Not
question.
recreation, I know that.
I guess we need to figure that one out. Who's responsible? Because somebody should be looking at it, monitoring it to make sure that the swings are
Right,
they get
that
repaired.
it's safe.
So, in terms of improving outdated and/or broken playground equipment,
Yeah.
is Recreation Department, are they a responsible party whatsoever?
Not that I know of, because I've brought it up in meetings with the rec director, and there was talks about trying to put a fence around the playground for a long time, and that's
You
not
couldn't
not
do that
our-
yet.
Why is it? So is it due to vandalism, or how would the fence help?
to just be able to keep kids in.
Contain children.
Oh, I thought we were
More of
talking.
like a kid pen versus.
Oh, no.
Oh no, I was just talking about. So that's how I kind of came to the understanding that recreation doesn't have any
Oversees that.
control
Gotcha.
over that.
Or yeah. Okay.
They don't
So, like, the
they don't
pool-
oversee the park.
So
Just
they
like
might
Or the
be
playground.
equipment.
Or the playground.
Yeah, I don't know
Pool-
how that works here.
Pools are. We installed like the new picnic tables that are at the playground
Yes.
area.
Yes.
We installed those
Yes.
for funding through the
CPA.
CPC.
Yep. Right.
But I don't. We don't. I don't know if it's the DPW who
I know.
does,
Tricky.
because there used to be the Friends of the Park,
Right.
Mm.
and I don't know if funds for that. Like I don't. That park was built through community funding.
Mhm.
It wasn't built through any.
So in terms of that one's a question that
Yeah.
I'll need to sort of follow up on and get.
I think that Bruce would know from
Better.
DPW.
Yeah.
Because it's improving outdated indoor playground equipment and replace outdated equipment. I just put that for ongoing because as
Yes,
things break or
it-
get
yes.
outdated, we have to
Yeah.
update them. For identifying physical barriers, conduct ADA audits of all town-owned spaces. I put that years 1 to 3 because there is funding available to do these ADA assessments. It is something that I think at OCPC we're trying to sort of get into our wheelhouse sooner than later to do these because they're quick, they're easy. We have the bandwidth in-house to be able to do them. For improved accessibility, upgrade signage, paths, parking at parks, especially if we want to include something from the master plan and all of that. I put that in years 3 through 7, just because that's longer term. It'd be hard to do that all in the short term. Add inclusive amenities, such as installing benches, shade structures, and sensory features. That's probably also a medium term. I don't think it's quite 7 to 10, but it's probably closer to 3 to 7. Expand inclusive programs. Launch senior and adaptive recreation program. So that could be sort of, I don't know, maybe not technically politically correct, but like wheelchair pickleball. Like, how can you make sort of like recreational opportunities more inclusive, right? So where do folks think that fits on the timeline?
I think you could start developing programs 1 to 3.
Mm-hmm. maybe pilot a couple
Right.
programs
I
or.
mean, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because I'm not the responsible party. Council of Aging is in rec department.
I'm sure the Council on Aging has, as you said, ideas
Mhm.
already.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's just tough to think of anything within the next 5 years with recreation, considering our budget was zeroed out this year. So it's hard to
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian.
figure that out at this point. And I know that the town's financial issues aren't going to get better, so I don't know if our funding is going to come back anytime soon. So,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Like wheelchair basket, like you have so that's zero. It's like I added staff time because you would need maybe council on aging staff to like be over there with people or whatever. But whether or not recreation department is actually a responsible party is sort of, I think, what the question is.
Yeah.
And if not, then I can obviously take you out. But
I mean, it depends what it is. Right? Is it for children? Or is it for adults?
Yeah, if it's just requesting the time for a space, I think that
That's
that
reasonable.
would fall under our responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, improve and expand sidewalk network. I would say that's probably 7 to 10.
Yeah.
That's longer term.
Yep.
And then improving outdated, that's ongoing. Goal 4, unify and elevate land stewardship through visionary management plans. This one has 7 actions connected to it. Create tailored management plans, develop site-specific stewardship strategies, Conservation Commission and this committee, CPA funds, foster volunteer networks, establish friends of groups for parks and open spaces. The Open Space Committee and youth groups, for example, could be responsible parties there. I put grassroots fundraising because it's largely probably going to be through donations and community support that you're able to do a friends group. 4.3, launch volunteer cleanup crews, coordinate recurring stewardship events like cleaning up the ponds or, I don't know, if and when Flaherty Trail gets if there's like people doing like drinking at a fire pit again in the back there, making sure that that's all cleaned up and doesn't happen. Conservation Commission and volunteers, again, local donations and civic groups. Establish local control of Whitman Town Forest. Research current ownership and legal status. Determine pathway for town ownership or long-term control. This is Conservation Commission. I put Town Council and Select Board. Funding sources there, I think, is a question in terms of the actual sort of like researching and determining pathways. 4.5, develop a management stewardship plan for the town forest. Once you get it under control, engage community stakeholders and experts to create a plan for passive recreation, ecological management, and public access. For here, Conservation Commission, Open Space Committee, and there's a number of grants as well as CPA funds. Open the town forest for passive public use. So these are sort of like sequential. So establish control, develop a management stewardship plan for the actual town forest, open the town forest for active use, improve access points, signage, and trails to allow for public enjoyment. Here's DPW, Conservation Commission, and volunteers. There's some grants, CPA funding, and volunteer labor that could be connected to that. And then improve maintenance of neglected and overgrown public lands. Just generally, we walked a number of them over the past 2 months, including today. Conduct inventory of neglected parcels and prioritize cleanup. Here is the Conservation Commission. I wrote Concom because I was sick of writing it out. DPW, OSRP committee, and again, sort of engaging. You could, there's a green club or something at the high school, maybe connecting with that. Questions, comments, concerns here.
On 4.2, foster volunteer networks, I would add the Conservation Commission to this just because of our responsibility
Yep.
for ponds. So
Yep.
we would need to be part of that. There is already, we have money set aside from a local resident for Harding's Pond. So let's start on this.
Okay.
And I actually think, I mean, the Friends of the Park, say what you will about it, I think it was a good program. They did a lot of good for the park. Look at what we
Yeah. Right.
Towns are jealous of that.
Right.
I really think we need to get
Revive.
we
Right.
need to get that program
Right.
back up and running.
Right.
So let's contact you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
I mean,
we need a new Juno.
we need a new.
Yeah.
I know.
You carry the
Because look at the questions that we're asking. We don't know who's responsible for the swing sets.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
So to me, that's a big priority, especially with the park. So that's got to be a 1 to 3, the 4.2.
4.2 is 1 to 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Where do folks feel that 4.1 fits in terms of timeline? And again, don't think so much because
Could be a little longer.
we're doing a lot of like 1 to 3 and we're doing a lot of 3 to 7. That's fine because then sort of like once this gets finalized and it's actually time to do the work, those will then be prioritized in terms of those time periods.
So the question that I had was 3 of these 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 are all to do with the town forest.
Mm-hmm.
Are we only interested in town forest, or what about some of the other open spaces? And
Well, that's what 4.7 is in terms of like maintaining them. Do you mean in terms of getting control
yeah,
of them?
yeah, and
So-
developing them.
So these are just in terms of the goal. Elevate land stewardship through visionary management. So this is just the management of open spaces in terms of like the trail connections and actually like usability of these. That's in another goal.
So in my mind, I was thinking this should be generic. These 4.4, 4.5, 4.6 should just be generic to open spaces, not
Well, the
Specific
reason
to
why
what?
smack that, hey, we're going to do the town forest.
the reason why is because I think that that's a real opportunity in terms of like calling out the town forest because in doing the community outreach, there's a lot of people that don't know that this is a town forest, and until the town has control of it, it's really hard to do anything with it because the town's not going to use grant funds or town funds to manage something that they don't own. And so first it needs to figure out what you need to do in order to own it. Then you have to create the management and stewardship plan for it, and then you can just like open it up for community use.
So 4.1 or 4.7, no, not 7, 4.1 would be for like the Flaherty Trail. Because that's a priority.
Yes, 4.1 and 4.7 relate to sort of like Flaherty Trail or some of the other ones that we walked, Hobart or Bear Meadow, for example.
4.1 is really going to be like in our commission. We're going to have to sit down and be like, every single site that we own, how are we managing it? Because right now we don't really.
And to me, that's one document we need to
No,
have.
Yep,
yeah,
One
yep,
document
yep.
that says,
definitely.
And before you can do the rest of this, you need to do that piece because then
Yeah.
there's going to be some land that you're like, mostly like it's untouched. We're just going to leave that one alone versus like which one requires more attention and more stewardship.
Okay.
okay,
So I think creating the tailored management plans for all of them is probably a shorter term, 1 to 3, potentially. Or
Well, I think it's going to go in tandem with. First, we're still even identifying some of these places, so I guess it's going to go in tandem with that. I mean, that's why, probably 1 to 3.
because then launch volunteer cleanup crew, I think, is sort of shorter term. Establish local control of the Whitman Town Forest. So the way that I would maybe frame this is establishing local control of the Whitman Town Forest is 1 to 3. Developing the stewardship plan is 3 to 7. And then open the town forest for passive public use could either be 3 to 7 or that could be 7 to 10, depending on how long you think it would take you to develop that management plan of the town forest.
well, and that's actually building the trails, making the bridge we talked about. So I just worry about stacking now of, there's a lot in 1 to 3.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, this is just sort of like, this is just a vision and a wish list.
Yeah.
How many goals does Easton have?
Oh, gosh.
Oh no.
They're very ambitious in these.
Yeah.
We don't
There's
even
like
want to
80
talk about
or
it.
something.
Oh, for goodness
So there's
sakes.
going to be things in
They're
there they'll
crazy.
probably never get to.
Right.
So
Right.
it's good to sort of like be aspiration, but things like not having everything be sort of like
Tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
but balancing them because there's going to come a time where you're like, this is the next year's plan, or this is
Right.
or not next year's plan,
I
but
feel like more people will kind of come out of the woodwork too to assist.
To help.
Once you have like a town forest, like people will be excited about that. Even like the park group, I feel like people know. I had no idea there was a Friends of the Park. You know, once you
You're
kind
friends
of
of the town forest.
yeah, Friends
Yeah,
of the Town
true.
Forest, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
so do folks feel comfortable then having develop a management stewardship plan for the town forest and open it both 3 to 7, or do you want to do 7 to 10 for 4.6?
I'd go 7 to 10, and if we can
Right.
beat that,
And that
I
last
said,
one,
I said
4.7
3 to
is
10,
for
but 7
ongoing.
to 10
Yeah.
sounds better.
And I put ongoing for
Yeah.
that last one just because it's
Yeah.
improved
Yeah.
maintenance and blah, blah, blah. All right. Goal 5. We're halfway there. So we did the first half in half an hour. So, and some of these are short. Goal 5, empower local champions, improve transparency and plan implementation. That's sort of the ongoing sort of maintenance of the open space plan. 5.1, institutionalize implementation oversight. Form an open space recreation plan implementation subcommittee. Can include members here, but not exclusively, to get more community involvement. Responsible parties here, I have the open space recreation plan committee and town administrator. Anyone else that should be added here in terms of a responsible party for the institutionalization of the oversight of the plan?
Instead of, because people are always changing on these committees, maybe it could just continue to be a representative from recreation, conservation, the zoning, the other one.
Planning.
Oh, it's planning board. Yeah.
Yep, Brendan's from
Yeah.
planning. So whether it's the same people, but the department should be representative.
Yeah.
Okay. Rep from boards and committees. Great. 5.2, monitor and track progress. Again, sort of regularly going through the 10-year action plan, what's been done, what hasn't been done, what needs to shift, be reprioritized or prioritized. An action here, create and update stakeholder action checklist annually. Again, here I have the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee, which will then be the implementation committee. For there, I put staff and volunteer time, which is going to be most of these. 5.3, engage the public annually, host annual open forums for feedback, just in terms of like, here's what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like using the town forest, for example, or how's the Flaherty Trail working for you? Any additional thoughts? Again, would be that implementation committee, as well as boards and commissions in town, and then share progress, publish public progress reports every 3 years. So it fits in with 1 year's 1 to 3, 3 to 7,
Right.
7 to 10, which would be that implementation committee again. Again, it's years 3, 6, and 9. Funding sources would largely be staff and volunteer time for these, because that's largely who's largely part of these committees. In terms of time frame, thoughts, questions, concerns on any of this, or as well as thoughts on the time frame for these, with the exception of 5.4 because that's it.
On 5.4, they should also report to the Board of Selectmen so that they submit it to them for oversight.
So publish public progress reports every 3 years, and the select board.
And submit them to make a presentation to the select board to show progress.
but they wouldn't be responsible.
No, just to show progress, and maybe it'll be on TV.
It will be televised, and so
people would
therefore
say,
that's
you guys are doing
community,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is 5.1 this meeting?
Doesn't kind of, but doesn't have to be. So you want to have some sort of you want to operationalize the action plan in some way so that it's not just sort of approved at the end of the process and then sits on a shelf somewhere, and then 10 years from now
Yeah, dust it off.
isn't a whole nother process to sort of do it without knowing exactly. And so having some sort of dedicated implementation subcommittee who meets, again, it doesn't have to be bi-monthly, or it could be quarterly, it could be, biannually, whatever, just to sort of review the goals and objectives in the action plan, and provide those regular updates.
So I think you'd want to stop that within 1 to 3.
That's 1 to 3. Yep. Monitor and track, that's ongoing. number 5.2. Engage the public annually. That's annually. And then years 3, 6, and 9 for sharing progress. Goal 6. Inspire community pride and connection through trail visibility and nature events. This one has 6. 6.1. Increase wayfinding and interpretation. Install kiosks and signs along trails so that people know that they're there. For here, I put recreation. Some of these might not be right. So if this is the right, please correct me. Recreation Department and Conservation Commission. CPA funds can help with that. Expand trail access and outreach. Produce trail maps, both print and online. For this one, I put the subcommittee. The library might be able to help with that. And the Conservation Commission, I'm assuming. CPA and open space signage grants can help fund those. Host recreation and engagement events. Coordinate Explore Whitman Outdoors Week nature events. So that, there's some sort of like annual or semi-regular sort of like Explore Outdoor, where people are sort of like prompted to go to the park or Flaherty Trail or Bear Meadow or whatever. Recreation Department, Cultural Council for that one. Promote, which might also be Concom. Promote community cleanup and beautification. Launch Town Cleanup Day and Pollinator Garden programs. Something that came out of the conversations at Park Ave School was pollinator gardens. That doesn't seem like that's going to be because the select board is working through something with that site.
Yeah, true.
But other opportunities for other pollinator gardens. If there's like underutilized sort of like open space at the end of I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Cul-de-sac or something like that. Is there like it's not good for other recreational uses, but could it be like a pollinator garden, for example? Expand public events and social gatherings. This was referenced numerous times in the survey. Hosting seasonal events like farmers markets, movie nights, and concerts. I know Whitman does summer concerts, but there might be opportunities to do.
I saw a sticky that said fire pit, so you could sit, friends could sit around the fire pit.
Yep.
It was a sticky.
Oh.
Yeah, someone did say like
on the
more
thing, yeah, sure. Yeah.
sort of like
Campfire night.
fire pits.
Yeah.
Someone did ask whether or not it would be possible to allow tents like camping in the town park, and I was like, probably not.
I'm
They're the same people that said fire pits, but
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think
move in.
they're gonna.
yeah, no,
tents to the-
right,
Yeah.
right.
And then 6.6, evaluate options for seasonal or event-based car-free zones to enhance pedestrian access and community use. So for this, identify potential locations for car-free zones near parks, downtown, or event spaces. Conduct traffic and pedestrian studies to assess feasibility and impacts. Engage stakeholders, including residents, businesses, and public safety officials through surveys or forums. Pilot a car-free zone during a seasonal event or weekend to test community response. I was part of a group that sort of rolled out what would become sort of open streets in Boston, which they sort of like close Newbury Street, for example, in Boston to cars. And they have like, resources and the businesses along the street sort of like have tables.
Right.
And so just thinking about what would it look like to close, was that Washington Street?
It is Washington
Like,
Street.
what would it look like to close Washington Street to cars?
Yeah.
One Saturday,
Right.
In the summer. And then have like, all those businesses have tables and other sort of like
Right.
just come out and
Right.
have games or things in the street. So that's sort of like what that's about. Questions, comments, concerns on goal 6?
The signs and the kiosks along trails for recreation.
Yep.
Recreation in Whitman is kind of consolidated to like the summer camp in the park,
So
the pool.
Yep. So if it's not the pool or summer camp,
Yeah.
recreation to fair.
But I've been thinking about this a lot over the last like 3 years I've been on the commission. Is that it's kind of similar to what's happened in Hanson recently, where they used to have the Camp Kiwanee was their recreation commission, but they were really only responsible for Camp Kiwanee, and they have recently created now a separate recreation commission because they have like a new park that's being built near where the tuberculosis hospital was, and things like that. So I don't know if in the next 10 years, if there's a possibility of kind of expanding what Whitman recreation is, especially if we get things like a dog park and skate park and things like that, if that would kind of expand. Like our footprint really right now is we rent out the ball fields that the town owns. DPW maintains them, and then you kind of just work with the DPW and with the pool and the stuff at the park. So
How many people are on the commission, Ryan?
2 right now. We don't
Ooh,
have. We've had to have Dan Salvucci come as our
that's right.
select board rep
That's right.
because we've had 3 people in the last year join and quit. So
Oh, do you know why? Just
it seems like they had kind of different expectations of what Whitman
Yeah.
Recreation does in our scope, and
Yeah.
and they had interests that didn't really like align, and they kind of wanted to push us forward in directions we couldn't go. So they became quickly disinterested when they realized we're kind of just managing that kind of. I guess they were looking for stuff that was outside of our scope.
yes.
Okay, so I'll remove you from things that aren't necessarily in your scope outside of the pool and the park space and those sorts of things.
But
Like really, children. You get the park program, you get the pool. You don't really have
Yeah.
an adult program.
But I think that's
They
like
used to do
future.
basketball and things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, they used to do like 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, and so like if that stuff like that would happen, I think maybe we would take over responsibility for.
Yeah.
Say,
Do you think if you had
pickleball
more,
court.
if you had more public, no, not public, but committee engagement or dedication, you would?
I'm not necessarily sure because, like, it's more I think of a budget thing.
Yeah.
It's like I think.
Yeah, it all
I think a
circles
lot of
back
that
to
stuff
money.
falls
Yeah,
into the larger
Yeah.
scope of the DPW's budget,
Yep.
and our budget's very, very
Yeah.
small. So.
right. Yep.
So, for the sort of
Yeah.
realization of
20
I
minutes.
want to try to get
Yeah.
through the rest of these
Yeah.
by 7:30, just so I have something to
Me
present to next week,
Me
the
too.
public meeting. So, sort of put this, but the increased wayfinding interpretation, the kiosks and sign along trails. I have Conservation Commission and I added DPW 3 to 7 years. This is something.
Yes.
Okay. Expand trail access and outreach. The trail maps printed online. That's something that might be shorter term, 1 to 3, because you, or maybe is it 7 to 10 because you need the trails in place. So
Trails
that's it.
first.
Right.
Yeah, and you can put the conscom on that one.
Yep, I just added them. I took off the library. I don't know why I added the library to that one, but they can be a partner in terms of like having them. So that's 7 to 10. Engagement events such as Explore Whitman Outdoors Week. I took off the recreation department. Put on cultural council and the open space recreation plan committee. Anyone else that needs to be added that's not there? I think that's a 3 to 7 because if you're planning a week and doing all that, cleanups. That's easy enough. I will put 1 to 3.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have garden club in there. Whitman doesn't have a garden club.
Oh, pollinator.
Could have one. Concom, 1 to 3. Private donations can help. Expand public events such as seasonal events, farmers markets, movie nights, etc., etc. I took off a recreation department. Rec-
We could stay on for that.
Okay,
because
rec department.
we have in the past
Movies?
when we had a budget.
Oh yeah.
Movie nights,
Yeah.
and we do like the 4th of July event and things
Right.
like
So rec department, cultural council. I took the library out as a responsible party. I think they're a partner, but not necessarily a responsible party. Anyone else that should be there that's not DPW.
Help set up.
Yep. There's a number of grants that are available. That
Yep.
might be something that private sponsors are interested in helping to support. 3 to 7, if folks feel, or is that a longer term 7 to 10?
For number 66.
Yep, 6-5.
65.
Yeah, well, you're kind of already doing some of it. The movie night.
Yeah.
So
3.
Yeah,
1 to 3?
concerts are
Yeah, 1 to
happening.
3.
Yeah.
And as someone who helped start a farmer's market in Brighton, it's a little work on the front end to do it, but you could do it within like 2 to 3 years. And then seasonal event-based car-free zones, I'll just put 7 to 10 because that's tied in with the master plan probably. Longer term. Goal 7, transform Whitman into a walkable, bikeable town with connected greenways. 7.1, improve pedestrian infrastructure, repair sidewalks, install lighting on key corridors. The responsible party here, I think, is largely DPW. There's funding through the Complete Streets program and MassWorks for this in terms of time frame. What would you put?
At least 3 to 7.
Yeah, I think so
3 to
too.
7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a heavy or a lift.
Support active transportation. So active transportation is anything that's outside of a car, largely walking, biking. Install bike racks at parks and public buildings. For here, I put DPW, the planning board, because I don't know. Do you have to get?
Oh,
Do you have to get
like say we're
town
gonna put them?
approval for
Yeah,
it?
good
For
question.
zoning?
Yeah.
Oh,
Or at least for planning?
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Select.
They have to
Select
approve
board. Yep.
locations.
And I'll put cultural council down because I think it might be interesting to include them in doing sort of like, I think I've referenced this before in terms of like historic or art based
Yeah.
bike racks.
Yeah.
It might be interesting to have them
Right.
involved as well.
And DOT for funding.
Yep. DOT. Do folks feel 1 to 3, 3 to 7?
1, 2,
1 to 3.
3. I go with
Yeah, bike rack is
Yeah,
doable.
let's-
7.3, which is the ones that we're sort of been talking about the whole time, plan regional trail connections. Evaluate the feasibility of, and I put rail because not all of them are rail trails, some of them are, some of them might be. Rail trail links to East Bridgewater, Rockland, and Abington. So, Rockland via Camp Alice Carlton, Bear Meadow to East Bridgewater, and then Abington to the north through Hobart Meadow. For here, I put Planning Board and Conservation Commission. I think that's 7 to 10.
I do too.
Well, let's evaluate the feasibility. Aren't we already doing that?
Yeah, I was going to say ongoing.
Oh, that's on.
Yeah,
Yep.
ongoing.
Ongoing. Yep. Because then you'll have to have plans specifically for like those connections alone.
Yeah.
7.4, integrate greenways into town plans, which sort of builds off of that. Embed trails into transportation and open space connectivity. I put planning board there. Anyone else? Is that Concom as well?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Time frame for that one?
It's gonna. I'm just trying to
At least 5 to 7.
I think
Very
so
good.
too.
Cool. That's
7. Yeah.
So this is in terms of if Whitman does master plans, housing production plans, other plans, which is why DLTA and regional planning assistance is there, because we can sort of on our end embed these greenways into those like planning processes, which should then open up additional resources. So I did put OCPC down as a responsible party because I think this is mostly town, but time frame is probably ongoing because these plans are happening all the time. I'm trying to remember why I have these as blue. It'll come to me eventually. 7.5, expand pedestrian infrastructure. I think it's because I wasn't sure. Build sidewalks to connect neighborhoods with parks and schools. DPW and planning board. There's no CDBG in Whitman, so I can cross that off.
You kind of got that in another.
It's related, which is
Yeah.
probably why it's blue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because event-based car-free zones.
Yeah.
So those are in
Those
2
are
different
already
places.
in there, yeah.
But I think it's just to show sort of continuity through the number of these. So it's going to be included and they'll mirror each other, just to show that some of these goals are embedded in multiple places.
so just double check the responsible parties.
Yep. Expand. I'll look at the time frames for these. 7.7. I have to add what the actual activity is, but I think it was connected to expanding trailways because I see expand trail networks by extending the loop via Colebrook Boulevard and extending the Donald Flaherty Trail. Coordinate trail design, land access, and community engagement. Seek partnerships with adjacent towns and agencies. So I think that's large. I think that's. I'll come up with that one. Let me just circle these.
On 7.7.
I have a little more work to do. Yep.
On 7.7, do you want to add in on Colebrook Boulevard? So that's Little Comfort Park. So that trail that's on the other side is Little Comfort Park.
The
Okay.
one across the street?
No, so on the, you got the Boulevard
Yes.
trail on the opposite side of the pond. That's Little
Oh.
Comfort Park.
Like next
So
to the vehicle.
Little Comfort
Yeah.
Park should be included there, or should it replace Colebrook Boulevard?
People will recognize it if you say Colebrook Boulevard. Most people don't know, but there's a stone that says Little Comfort Park.
So what I'll do is Colebrook Boulevard, and then like
Yeah,
brackets I'll put.
parentheses.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll come up with the before Tuesday next week for the goal for that one. Goal 8. secure and steward critical open spaces, prioritize land protection, acquire open space, partner with landowners, transfer Whitman Town Forest to town stewardship, which is repeated a little bit, and then permanently protect the Whitman Town Forest as conservation land. For 8.1, identify and map priority conservation parcels, which again is currently what's being done with Section 5. Use CPA funds and grants to protect high value land, to acquire and protect high value land for conservation purposes. 8.3, promote conservation easements and donations of land. Again, once you have that sort of process in place. Work with ownership entities to formally transfer land if needed for Whitman Town Forest, and then place a conservation restriction on land after transfer for the Whitman Town Forest. So here, most of this is Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Town Council, and Select Board, with a number of sort of funding sources there. I put in purple at the bottom just a summary of town forest integration in terms of the process that's needed. So first, you need to investigate and initiate transfer of ownership and control to Whitman, create a multi-use management plan with ecological and public access goals, protect the land through conservation restrictions, and then open the town forest to passive recreation use such as walking and bird watching.
I'm pretty sure the Whitman Town Forest is already on the Conservation Commission.
So from the research that we did,
Yeah.
it looked like it was tax taking in the 1930s, and I'm not able to find any information beyond that.
Yeah, it's under our commission. It is like it's town owned. So I mean, like
Yeah.
when we looked at that map of the parcels, where it's like the
Yeah.
majority is
The tax map.
the tax map. So there's like a good
Conservation,
swath of land that is town owned currently, and then there's like smaller parcels around it that are like randomly privately owned. We looked at.
Yeah.
Oh, so there are parcels that are just owners unknown.
There were I think there were some that were like absent owners. Or like they're just vacant land around it. With the conservation restrictions, is that like part of the state where it's like designated as a town forest in that
Yeah.
process?
And there's a whole
Okay,
process that's
That's
needed.
right, okay.
So there's a difference, and this
Yeah.
we'll get to later
Yeah.
in terms of like when you're actually going through this process.
Yeah.
Do you want it formally identified as Whitman Town Forest,
Right.
which then you have to have like a forest management plan and all of that, which the
Ooh.
state requires?
Yep.
Or do you want to have it sort of like be conservation controlled and be like Whitman Woods, for example?
Yeah,
So it's not
right.
a town forest, but it's
Right.
like under conservation control
Right.
With less restrictions.
with less restrictions.
But
and
they-
so
There's
it's,
better grants.
Yeah,
going
that's
for
what
us.
the money would probably because of the trails.
I don't know about
Right.
grant money for forests. I mean, well, there's not a lot going on.
I think
with forests.
essentially
It's just management.
it's
And forests, they harvest, strategic harvest of forest
Yeah.
to maintain it.
well, if something's also identified as a town forest, it has to be registered through the state town forest, like
Oh.
Mount Standish and Plymouth.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole like these like
Thing.
requirements that you have
Yeah,
to do to do
sure.
that.
Sure.
So,
And so like if you want to like have it under the benefit and control of Whitman, and you don't want to go with like the formal town forest routes, you can essentially call it whatever you want.
Okay.
It's just not a town forest.
right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So acquire open space, I put ongoing. Partner with landowners, promote conservation easements and donations is probably also ongoing. Transfer Whitman Town Forest to town stewardship. That depends on the process, but that's probably a longer term.
Yep.
I'll just put 7 to 10 for now. And then permanently protect the Whitman Town Forest as conservation land. That would be ongoing, I would believe. Goal 9. There's only 3 here. Equip landowners with tools and knowledge to support land stewardship. The first would be to build 9.1, build online and digital resources. Develop landowner web hub. Chapter 61, land trusts, tax info. I put the assessor and open space recreation plan committee here. Concom, does that fall under your purview as well?
Probably with the land trust.
Yeah.
Concom.
The assessor primary.
Yeah.
Promote land protection tools. Distribute info via mailers, newsletters, and tax bills. I put Conservation Commission here.
Maybe.
Maybe
not.
assessor's office.
Assessor?
Yeah.
And the tax bills.
Assessor. Okay. And then host outreach events. Hold annual landowner info sessions. For this, I just put the steering committee as a placeholder. For time frame, do folks feel comfortable just putting these generically as ongoing?
Maybe we haven't started some of them.
Because it's about I mean, I think building online is the first thing you'll need to do. Promoting and hosting are ongoing sort of
Yeah,
style
but I
wording.
think you need the assessor.
So they're like recurring,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
put the duration, but
Yeah.
Right.
the assessor might say, yeah, okay.
Usually they say no, to be honest with you. I don't understand it all the time, but
So for time frame,
1 to 3, I would.
1 to 3.
Yeah, on the 9.2, because you still got to work with the assessor's office. And,
Yep, I'll assess it for that one.
Yeah.
And then the last one, with 5 minutes left, expand recreational offerings to meet evolving community needs. 10.1, evaluate the feasibility and potential sites for a community skate park to meet youth recreation needs. 10.2, evaluate the feasibility and potential sites for a community dog park. 10.3, enhance the comfort and usability of recreational areas. And then 10.4, develop revenue generating activities to support open space and recreation. So for 10.1, conduct a feasibility and site analysis for skate park. For this one, I put planning recreation department, which I'm not sure if that's actually, is that right? Maybe.
Yeah, no, that would
And
be
planning board and DPW. There's the CPA funds. The Tony Hawk Foundation will fund skate parks as well as some other resources and local fundraising efforts. 10.2, the community dog park. Identify location and funding. Ensure accessibility and shade. Something that was important to people that
Oh,
I
yeah,
talked
true.
to at Whitman Day was having a dog park that's grass versus rocks, because people don't like the Abington one because it's rock.
Oh, I didn't think
And it
it
gets really hot in the
I
summer
didn't
for the
think there'd be a
dogs.
dog park that was rocks.
Where is the Abington?
Wait, what?
Behind the senior center on Summer Street.
Oh, all right. I haven't been down there.
For that one, I put recreation department and select board and DPW.
Maybe
Like-
add the conscom to that. Just
Conscom.
want to be aware of where we're
Yep.
putting dog.
Again, there's some. There's a
yeah.
dedicated dog park grant that's available for dog parks. Enhance the comfort and usability. Install seating, shade, and flexible use recreational areas. Recreation department and the steering committee. Anyone else?
COA, because there's a lot of park equipment that older people can
Mhm.
exercise
Oh,
with.
wow.
Yeah, so they might want to do multi-generational equipment.
Yep. And that is referenced specifically in the open space committee because I just wrote it. But could also be around sort of like maybe repairing and fixing bleachers at Memorial Field, which I hear might be needed to be done sooner than later.
So then
Yeah.
it'd be
There were-
DPW then.
Or DPW too. Okay.
Yeah, there were calls for.
Because that's enhanced the comfort. But I didn't want to like call out a specific bleacher because
Yeah, you couldn't add anything to do with like actual helping the sports that play there, like scoreboards or like field goal posts or anything like that.
well, that could fit under enhancing the comfort and usability because
Oh.
installing a scoreboard
Alright.
does
Yeah,
increase.
that's
But I didn't want to like put an exhaustive list because I want to keep it general just in terms of like what that actually means.
Yeah, all right, because
That
that's
could
top
change
of
over
mind.
time.
Because one of the people who just resigned from the recreation,
Mhm.
he's involved in youth football and
Yep.
came to us with this proposal for a scoreboard there and stuff
Oh,
there,
yeah.
and we were like, sorry.
Yeah, so he had his
Don't
own
really have the
agenda.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then the last one, revenue generating activities. I think we talked about this because it came out of the survey. Pilot programs like equipment rentals, such as paddle boats or canoes. Maybe in Hobart Pond, for example, goose boats, similar to swan boats, maybe, or some kayak or canoes. Community classes or concession stands, for example. Explore partnership for event rentals and fee-based programs. Is that rec department?
it could be. Yeah, if we kind of
Morphed.
yeah, if we kind of
So potentially.
I feel
any-
like everything we do is with DPW. As
Anyone
well.
else that should be added to that responsible party there?
I'd say,
DPW, yeah.
DPW.
I'd say Concom and
Yeah.
conservation.
Yeah, we gotta
Cultural.
watch out what's
Cultural.
Cultural.
going on.
Yep.
with
Done.
ponds.
All right, and then for time frame, last thing, evaluate the feasibility. So skate park, 1 to 3.
Yeah.
This is just exploring the feasibility
High
versus
priority.
everything. Again, with dog park, exploring feasibility, whether they're actually doing it. I think is 1 to 3. Enhance the comfort, and blah 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 is ongoing. Because it's just because someone's comfortable in year 1 doesn't mean they're going to be comfortable in year 8, or vice versa. And then develop revenue generating activities would just be ongoing. I don't know if there's any grant funding that's tied to there. That's largely going to be sort of like,
Appropriation.
yeah. That is the 10-year action plan. I took the two versions that we previously looked at and just combined them and sort of updated it. Anything stick out as terms of like missing, shouldn't be there before presenting it to the public next week.
No. So I think you-
Yeah, that's great.
So for the public meeting next week, I'm probably not going to include grant funding just because that's sort of like ongoing. I'll just say, here's the goals, here's the actions. What are your thoughts? Because then it could potentially change.
All right, so I'll try to get that up on the front lawn sign.
Okay. I've noticed
again-
it's been off for the last, and I didn't know if it's because the funding was cut for the sign.
No. Yeah, good. I mean, yeah, it could have been, but that
I was
wasn't
like,
the
they
case.
slashed the sign budget.
I thought it was the whole.
All right. Yeah. So we're adjourning at 7:30. Do I have that right?
Right on
Yes.
time.
Okay, good.